Hey everyone, welcome to Singularity Computers Client Build 22 Part 5. It's finally time to install the pump and reservoir configuration. So that's what we're going to start with. After that I'm going to move on to the installation of the last of the components before I start building the water cooling loop. And then finally there's only a little bit of custom wiring and cable management to be done before this system is complete and ready to boot. As I've mentioned previously in the build log, to mount this pump and res config, we are going to be using SingularityComputers ethereal single silver reservoir mounts. And that's because there is basically nothing else we can use. Now these mounts are designed to be mounted directly onto essentially any radiator, any 120mm or 140mm fan mounting position. But thanks to the design and layout of this case, we have this perfect gap, this perfect position to mount the pump and res config, where it's just going to be amazingly balanced. For me, it's the only place to install it in this build. The good thing is these reservoir mounts can also be mounted directly to any case panel. Now, mounting it to the radiator is actually an option. You can see that we do actually have the height here, and as for the height, we can actually go all the way out to the glass panel that mounts onto the front of this case. I don't actually have the glass panel here. The customer didn't send it. But I certainly wouldn't go beyond the height of these graphics cards just to keep a balanced looking build. But that is certainly possible depending on your radiator thickness. I mean, you do need to consider that I still need to install the fans, but there is also the option with a small mod to mount the fans into the rear section of the case. So there are plenty of options here. So we are obviously going to need to drill some holes, and what we need to think about before I start is, are we going to use the backplate or not? Because with the backplate removed, these reservoir mounts can mount straight onto the case panel, and that will look incredibly clean. But even if I was going to install the backplate, I would install it on the back of the case panel where it's going to be completely out of sight. Okay, the first thing I'm doing here before I've masked up is getting a position for the pump and res config. And what I'm looking at is where it's going to look the most balanced. Then the next thing I need to look at is the very slim chance that I might be able to use some of the existing holes. And if not, which I can't, then I need to make sure that I drill my new holes away from existing holes, otherwise it's going to make a mess. So I'm just going to take one measurement down from the top, which is 30mm. And that's all I need because I have the back plates right up against the side of the radiator. So that is telling me where it's centered between the radiator and the ends of the graphics cards. So I'm only masking up where I'm going to be drilling the holes. You don't need to mask up anywhere else, unless you have lines to mark or something. Because I've waxed this custom paint job, the tape doesn't want to stick. It never sticks too much anyway. That's the whole point in painter's tape. You don't want it to be sticking so much that it rips off the paint afterwards. So remember, there are a couple of reasons you are masking up. One, to protect the paint job. Two, as a good clean surface to mark out on. I'm just marking out my vertical measurement here. So using the backplate as a template makes it really easy because it's telling me my distance that I need to be away from the radiator, and it's also acting as a square, to get a proper horizontal line. Okay, I'm just checking to make sure that I roughly have my positioning. I've drawn horizontal lines through my dots so that I can see that I have the heights correct. In this case, it's better that they're a little bit closer together than further apart because they can't go any further apart than they already are. Why didn't I drill these holes to begin with, before the custom paint job? Well, that is because I needed the components to be installed so that I could get the positioning for them. And that is often the case with modding. Sometimes you'll have the case so you can actually do the custom paint job, but the components are still, even a month away from arriving. Instead of delaying and waiting until those components are there so that you can build half the system to test fit it, you go ahead with the custom paint job and then do little mods like this later, it can save a huge amount of time. Now, for this build, it would be easy enough for me just to remove all of the components to drill these holes. But in some cases, you might be right at the end of the build, you've done a huge amount of work, the loop might be done, and you need to do a little mod like this. And so this is something that you can do. Just set up tape around it like that. Now, keep in mind that it's not just about the iron filings running away down the paint job, they're also going to be flicking up. So often what I'll do is actually set up a powerful vacuum running right next to it while I drill the holes, but it's not going to be necessary for this. So I'm using a 4.5mm drill bit because the ethereal reservoir mounts use M4 bolts, which are 4mm. Just doing one final check to make sure that I'm not near any existing holes. Even though this is high quality painter's tape, still be careful when you're pulling it off the paint job, particularly around the holes where the paint might have been lifted. Okay, it's finally time to mount the pump and res config. I decided to go ahead and install the backplates anyway, even though they weren't really needed in this build. But really you should install them whenever you can. I mean, put it this way, the extra strength is certainly not going to hurt. And for this one, I just cut the side off it on the bandsaw and then sanded it with some 400 grit and some 800 grit. So it's come up quite nicely and it's added a lot of extra strength. The pump and reservoir configuration is finally installed, and I'm really happy with the way the installation has turned out. I've centered it horizontally between the radiator and graphics cards. I've centered it vertically to the radiator, but not including the lower end tank. So what this means is that once the fans are installed, it's going to be vertically centered to the 4 fans, which is just going to look amazing. I'm also really happy with the way I've installed the ethereal reservoir mounts. The top one is right up against the top cap. The bottom one is right up against the pump top, which not only looks amazing and streamlined, but it also adds a lot of extra strength. And you can see how incredibly clean the reservoir mounts look without the backplates, because the backplates are installed around the back. So you get the benefit of the clean aesthetics, but also the strength of the backplates. It's just a great configuration. Some of you will have noticed that I use custom bolts in all of my builds. This is something I started doing many years ago because I find the bolts included with a lot of components, particularly radiators, are quite restrictive. They don't look that great. Some of the heads are so small they fall through the holes. There's a lot of problems with them. I also like to have matching bolts right through my builds, and I'm very particular about the way my bolts look. You'll notice that I have matching bolts pretty much everywhere throughout this build, even for the assembly of the case. And the particular bolt that I find looks best for high-end water-cooled systems are black button-head Allen key bolts. And this particular combination is something that I've looked for a long time, and it didn't actually exist in some sizes, so I had it custom built. So if you're interested, on the SingularityComputers store, you'll find these custom built bolts, 632, M3, M4, nuts and washers, some countersunk sizes as well. And these are all of the sizes you could ever possibly need for building a high-end water-cooled system. Just a quick look at the stock bolts that came with the radiator. So they're not bad, they're black, but you know, the heads are a little bit ugly in my opinion. They're not clean. It's a hex head with a Phillips head, just something I prefer not to use. So overall, a very small detail, but all of the small details come together to make a big difference. For most builds, the next step I would normally take at this point would be to build the water cooling loop and fill it. Then finally I would move on to the installation of the custom cables. I would do the cable management and install the lighting. And the reason I like to do things that way is because I would much rather have the custom cables out of the way while I'm building the water cooling loop. But this build is going to be a little bit different because of the layout of the components, and in particular the mounting position of the power supply. The power supply is going to have an impact on the layout of the water cooling loop on my tubing runs. So this obviously means that I'm going to need to install the power supply before I can start building the water cooling loop, which would be fine if the power supply was modular, but it's not. It's semi-modular. The 24-pin cable is hardwired, which obviously means that installing the power supply at this point means also installing one of the custom cables. And I could just leave it hanging down, but it's just going to get messy. It's going to get in the way. So I've decided at this point I am going to install most of the custom cables, but I will still come back at the end to do the cable management. I'm also going to do the custom cables for the fans, the pump, the front panel connectivity, power and reset buttons. So this is just a little bit of the extra custom wiring that needs to be done in this build. Now something I'm going to start doing a little bit more is talking a bit about what I would do in a build. Now I can't talk about this too much because we'd definitely be here all day. You know, it would take up the entire build log, but just a few details here and there. And in this build, one of the big things that I really wanted to change was the fans, because what we're actually using are Thermaltake ring fans, and they are unfortunately going to be facing this way. You know, if I remove the sticker, it's going to improve the situation a little bit, but I just see this as such a missed opportunity, because with an open case like this, you could use, you know, one of the incredible looking fans that are out there, have the blades forward facing, and, you know, it's just a great opportunity to do it. The way this case is supposed to be configured, there is actually a dust filter on that rear panel there. You probably can't see it. We'll take a look at it later in the build log. It's a magnetic dust filter. So the air is supposed to be drawn through the radiator and exhausted towards the front, the glass panel. Now, I don't understand why you'd be worried about dust in a completely open case like this. It's going to be coming in from all angles anyway. And after all of my years of experience, I am not worried about dust anyway, because I know that no matter what you do, no matter how good the dust filters are, the dust is still going to get in. It's only a matter of time, and all you can do is slow it down just slightly. And in the end, the amount that you slow it down is just not worth it for the impact on the aesthetics. So what I would do is just forget about that dust filter, remove it, and have the fans exhausting out the back. Have the blades forward facing. It would just look amazing. And here are some of the fans I would actually love to use in this build. So number one, the new Corsair magnetic levitation bearing fans. Just an amazing looking fan. I mean, in terms of aesthetics, this is definitely one of my new favorite fans. I still need to test it for noise output and performance, but I'm sure it will excel because of the magnetic levitation bearing feature. It lasts longer, it's more durable, higher performance, quieter, but I absolutely love the design of this fan. It's industrial, clean, understated, anti-vibration, just absolutely love it. And it comes in all black, which is probably what I would use the most, but also 3 different LED color versions, white, red, blue. But yeah, it would look great in this build. Also, I would love to use Noctua Redux fans. This is a 140mm version, but you get the idea. So it does match the color scheme quite nicely. And one of my top choices would definitely be EK Vardar, because these fans are so quiet and such a good radiator fan. But you can see it just matches the color scheme perfectly with the black frame. It kind of blends into the radiator, and then the grey or silver blade, just a beautiful perfect match. And also great looking blades, well, on all of these fans. I'm attempting to improve the aesthetics of these fans as much as I possibly can. So first up, this side is going to be forward facing in full view, so I've removed the stickers. But underneath there's an opening and you can see a green PCB through there, so I'm going to have to probably replace the stickers with a nice looking vinyl, probably matte black. I'm also going to sleeve the cables all the way back into the center, which is really going to help things. Now what I do with my stock fan cables, I just cut the old connectors off. And this makes things quicker and easier because I'm going to strip the wires, repin, and install a brand new connector anyway, once I've figured out the length that I actually need the cables to be. So cutting off the connectors just is a quicker way of doing things. I'm going to replace them anyway. The other thing I need to do, these fans are RGB LED fans, and in this build we're using UV lighting and UV reactive coolant. We don't want anything interfering with the UV lighting, so these LEDs need to be removed, which is going to mean no more multicolored wiring here in full view, so that's also going to help the aesthetics. But the customer has requested that I replace these LEDs with UV LEDs. The thing is, the best UV lighting I have ever used by miles is dark side LED strips. So I'd rather only use those. I don't want to use anything else, but we'll wait and see. If I can install those LEDs, I probably will, but it looks like I have to get these frames apart. So I actually have some LEDs which have just arrived. They're 5mm LEDs, so they'll be exactly the same, perfect fit, and they're from Darkside and they're UV. So very excited about these. They'll probably be absolutely awesome in these fans. But we're going to come back to the fans in the next part of the build log. You can see that I've installed the power supply. So all of the main components are now installed. It's just the fans to be installed and the custom wiring. And then I can move on to building the water cooling loop. And all I really have to do with the custom wiring now is plug it in. But I do still need to test this power supply before I can do that. So that sums up this video. Thanks for watching, and remember that none of this would be possible without our patrons.